Hey guys, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. It's Kimberly and Timberly.
Kimberly.
Kimberly.
It's hard to say your own name sometimes, right?
And Tim Scott.
Yep,
and
that's us.
And here we are.
Here
We're
we are.
kind of matching today.
Yeah, we're doing black.
I know. We're not mourning anything. We're just trying to look skinny. Do we look skinny?
Yeah. People that are listening by
They're like shallow.
audio are like, okay, what are you talking
Actually,
about?
it's kind of funny since I got my hair cut short. I think we have a very similar look. I might grow out my beard to match you.
You know, they say the longer you've been married, the more you start looking like each other.
Yes.
Finishing each other's
We
sentences.
both have the salt and pepper at the temples, and so there you go.
I think you might have a little more gray than me.
In my beard or in my temples?
Well, babe, I don't
no,
know about the beard.
I definitely have more gray than you. So yeah.
In our head hair.
I'm looking forward to being completely gray like my grandpa. I want my grandma and grandpa's hair.
I like that salt and pepper thing.
They don't really see that side because
right here, right?
I know, but you don't see that because I'm on the wrong side. But
yeah.
Anyway,
Do you
it's my it's my little streak of wisdom. It's very slim.
Well, speaking of wisdom, no, never mind.
You got nothing.
I got nothing. Well, at Hope Rescue Podcast, we have entered into this new year. We're in the third week of 2024.
Right.
Our second installment for this year, but number 7
in our series.
We started a series before the end of the year of 2023, and then we took a break. And some of you wondered where we were. We got a lot of emails.
We were doing the things
saying,
you were.
Where are you? And we're back, and we're back every week, thankfully. And we started this series back in 2023, and it's 7 weeks, we're on our 7th week. It's 9 weeks. The 9 essential character traits for all relationships, whether it's marriage, children, rearing children, parents, friendships, co-workers, whatever it is, church. And we've gone over these. Patience. You need patience.
Yes.
If you want your relationships to be strong, you're going to have to patience. Number 2, confidence. You need to be confident within yourself, which comes from a proper relationship with God, understanding who you are.
Right.
Self-esteem, that's not high self-esteem, but confident self-esteem, really balanced view of yourself, passion for life and the things that matter to you, optimism. Pessimists are a dime a dozen, but an optimist is great to have in a relationship. And we talked last time about flexibility. And today we're going to talk about humility. And I've always said, I want to be humble because I thought it'd make me look good.
We have something to say about you today, that person. False humility.
Yeah, and then the last 2, which we'll get to in the coming weeks, is respect and gratitude. Those are the 9 things. We have an anchor verse, and Kimberly, would you read that anchor verse for us? I guess I'm supposed to read it, aren't I?
Well, I can do it.
No,
I think I'll read it.
You read it.
You've been talking for 3 minutes,
Yes,
so it's my turn. Wow. Speaking of humility, Philippians 2:3, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also the interests of others. We need to, in 2024, make humility sexy again.
Bring back humility.
Bring back humility. Because it doesn't seem like, the word, especially, I don't know, maybe for a woman, it smacks of like, oh, humble means to like make myself low. For a man, I would imagine it feels like weakness. But Scripture is really clear that, and by Jesus' life and example on this planet, and in Scripture, humility is precious.
Yeah.
And so, but there is something called false humility, which
we're going to talk about genuine humility and false humility.
Yeah.
False humility is a trap. If you have a relationship with somebody who has false humility, you're going to see the things we're going to talk about in just a moment. But when you see that, it's a warning and you need to address it.
Right.
If you have false humility, you need to take a self-assessment and really look at why you are manifesting false humility. So we're going to kind of unpack false humility and genuine humility.
Yeah. So, first thing that comes to mind with false humility is that it comes from pride, actually, and we've all known people like this, where they see themselves as more important than others,
Yeah.
but the words that they deliver are almost like from a inauthentic place where they're trying to, it's more about their appearance of looking godly or acting better than in their humility than really like a genuine actualization of part of their nature. So it's almost like the pharisaical perspective, like they want to appear like they're doing all the things, like and they're saying the right things, but you can just feel the oozing sort of pride underneath of it, and that they are not that person in private, they're that person in public, which is not real humility at all.
Yeah, it's not to rip on the Amish, but the Amish have a form of humility. Men are not allowed, they have to wear beards, but they cannot wear a mustache. Do you know why?
No.
It seems prideful to have a mustache, because that is seen as worldly and bringing attention to yourself. So you get the Abraham Lincoln beard,
Wow, that's
the chin
interesting.
strap. I know. I think, and then women, the dresses they wear are in modesty, and there's nothing wrong with modesty. I think we could use a little more of that. But the reality is there is a form of humility without a heart of humility.
Right.
And when you're in a relationship with someone who has false humility, they have pride, just like Kimberly was saying. They have pride. And what's the second?
Well, false humility can be used to diminish the partner.
Yeah.
So that's, that whole feigning humility, but actually it can end up being very manipulative and almost gaslighty,
Yeah.
So it's like using words that sound like you're being humble, but actually the end game is to gain back for the person that's using them. So
think about somebody that provokes you, and they do it over and over and over again, and then you finally react, and they, with a false sense of humility, stand back and go, wow, you seem like you're out of control.
Right.
And you're being gaslighted.
Right.
You're being manipulated by false humility.
Right.
And it's a control factor. It's a really good
And it makes you crazy.
It diminishes the partner.
Right.
Number 3 is this: false humility manipulates the partner into a false sense of safety. So it not only diminishes them, but it also manipulates them into feeling that they are safe. So think about how a toxic person, a narcissist works. He or she will begin to use this humility, and they'll what do you call it when you give presents and accolades and stuff like that? When you do that in a relationship, they
love bombing.
Love bombing, yeah. Because you mentioned that a lot. Love bombing. So somebody that has not true humility, but they're love bombing, it's used as a manipulation to make you feel safe. And then out comes the control factors of, crushing you and making you feel less than. We talked about in the previous one being diminished. So that's false humility is something that can really be destructive. And if you don't have safety, you're not going to have intimacy. You're not going to have a real relationship. And then the fourth thing of false humility is toxic people often use this false humility to manipulate as a manipulative method to control. And it kind of goes with the last one, and that is, you love bomb and then you start to control, and it just it's a death trap for relationships. It just doesn't work. So we're going to talk about genuine humility. And genuine humility, in contrast to false humility, really has to do someone doesn't just have the form, but they've got a heart. They release control. They are confident enough within themselves to release control and submit to somebody else's ideas, needs, hurts and pains, successes, failures. They are easy. They give praise. They're genuine in their humility. Everything's not about them. They reduce themselves. Humility The Greek word for humility means to become low. And it's the idea of diminishing self. It's that famous saying, I must decrease that he might increase.
Yeah.
You know who said that? John the Baptist. And John the Baptist had all of these tens of thousands of followers. And Jesus at that point in, Matthew chapter 3, when Jesus comes on the scene, he had how many followers? None. He had just come onto the scene for his ministry to begin. John the Baptist had tens of thousands of followers.
Right.
And he said, I have to diminish so that he, Christ, might be increased in the hearts and minds of people.
That's a beautiful example of humility. I had never thought about that before.
Yeah. So you reduce yourself.
It doesn't make, like John the Baptist, it didn't make him less impactful as a leader.
No.
It didn't make him less of a person. It actually raised his value and he was walking in his role as the highest form of a leader by doing that.
Yeah.
But how often we think of lowering ourselves means making less of ourselves. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, people that are humble don't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
They take situations seriously. They take relationships seriously. They take faith and God seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously. I remember the first time I heard Mike Meeks, our friend who pastored for 25 years or whatever it was, or 20 years at Eastlake. And he said it a lot, and that is, we don't take ourselves seriously. We take our faith seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And he was very self-deprecating in his humor.
Yeah.
And humble people can do that. And proud people can do that as a form, but not reality.
Right.
But when you don't take yourself too seriously, it's a manifestation of confidence and a real humility.
And
There's no pretentiousness.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, don't you find that also humility, people that have humility tend to be unpretentious. They don't have that pretense about them where they're demanding, or they come in a room and everything's about them. They just have a quiet strength about them and unpretentiousness.
And maybe most importantly is humble people release their own rights and affirm other people's rights. So I have a right to this. I have a right to that. People that are humble are capable, when the situation is appropriate, to release those personal rights and give the right. So a humble person gets in line,
Right.
and someone cuts them off. A humble person in the right situation will go, you know what? I'll let that person go.
Right.
They don't have to be right. They don't have to win. They're humble enough to do that. So just keep this in mind. The assertion of rights indicates a problem in a marriage. Think about that. When you're asserting your rights, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, but when you're asserting your rights or feel like you have to assert your rights, that should be a red flag.
Right.
Something's wrong in your relationship.
Feeling demeaned.
If you have assert your rights, you are feeling demeaned. And so if you're in a marriage where you feel like it's a fight for rights, stop for a minute and realize we've got a problem.
Right.
And work on it together.
Right.
Instead of demanding your rights be observed,
Yes.
just relax for a moment and say, "Hey, we've got a situation here. We've got an opportunity to fix this. Let's work on it."
So if you were to say, what is the opposite of humility? I would guess it would be being prideful and pretentious.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're proud, you're not humble.
Right.
And every one of us struggles with pride.
Yes, we do. That's
Every
a part
one
of
of
our
us
human
does,
nature.
yeah.
So the question is how to develop humility. And there's a great scripture here in Philippians 2:3 that says this: "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. So it's not saying there, don't look to your own interests. It's saying not only to your own interests. So it's not wrong to care about yourself, your soul, your needs. All of those things are valid, but we're also to look to the interests of others.
Yeah, I learned these two verses in the King James version back in a million years ago. And, the King James says, see others as better than yourself. And I'm like, wait a minute. What if somebody's not as good a singer, or somebody's not as smart, or somebody's not as talented or productive? That's not what he's talking about. These two verses 3 and 4 of Philippians 2, are so clear about what humility is. It says, humility counts others more significant than ourselves. And he's talking about what the significance is in verse 4. Esteem others' interests while you esteem your own interests, but put theirs above yours. In other words, if I am humble in my relationship with you, I put you before me.
Right.
Even though there may be something I'm better at than you are, or you're better at than I am, you're looking to my interests, I'm looking to your interests.
Yeah.
Humility doesn't say, I'm worthless, I'm no good. Humility says, I see this person I'm in a relationship with as their rights, their interests, their concerns, their pain, their suffering, their successes are more important than mine. That's how I'm going to treat these people.
Yeah,
that's humility.
That's good.
So here's how to develop humility. Number one, take a genuine interest in your partner or your friend or whoever it is. Sympathy will always result in humility. When you are sympathetic, you will be humble. And I made this statement, and I really want you to hear this. This is, you cannot simultaneously be prideful and sympathetic to others.
That's good.
Pride is dislodged by sympathy. So when you enter into somebody else's pain, a lot of people call it empathy, but the Bible calls it sympathy. Sympathy is where I am entering into your pain or even your success, and I rejoice with you when you rejoice.
Yeah.
I suffer when you suffer. That comes from a heart of humility. So you can't be prideful and simultaneously be sympathetic. They are mutually exclusive.
Right. Number 2 is such a good one, is take every opportunity to praise the success of your partner / friend / child / coworker, but this other person. Take every opportunity you can to praise their success. Yeah. Our world, can you imagine? The culture of our world is to attack, critique, tear down, and we've always been really big on the topic of how words bring life or death. But if you can be intentional to take every opportunity to praise the success of your partner, what a change that would be, because those words of life are like gasoline in the tank of your marriage, of your working relationship, of the culture of your home. So powerful to be able to step into humility, and by surrendering this part of you, which is praising the successes of other people around you. Yeah.
Years ago, many years ago, we were speaking at a church, not in our area, but away from this area. And we were speaking together. And before we went in there, we had a keynote, or like a deck, a slide deck that we were going to present. And so I had to coordinate that, and there was a little bit of problem with it. So I went back to the sound booth, and I was dealing before the first service. There were several services, but before the first service, I dealt with the sound guy back there, and we got it together, the tech team. And then we did ours, and the presentation went without a hitch. It was really great. And then after the service, I went back because my computer was running their systems, their slide systems, and I went back there to collect that. But I also went by the sound booth and then into the tech room. And when I went by the sound booth, I go, "Hey guys, thanks for serving back here. Thanks for doing this today." This was at the end of the day. I went into the tech booth and I thanked all the guys sitting there and so forth. And then I had talked to the in the green room. I had talked to we had talked to the praise team, the band, and just thanked them for serving. And that's kind of what we do when we go somewhere, or even at our own church when we were pastoring. We thank our people for doing that. And when I was in the sound booth and I thanked this guy, he said, "Wow, thank you." And I said, "What do you mean, thank you?" And he said, "Well, I've never been thanked before." And I thought, wow, that is, you're kind of behind the scenes. Somebody that speaks gets a lot of accolades and gratitude.
Right.
Somebody that sings, or even in the band, a guitar player, whatever. But those guys, those hidden
serving
people,
in the dark,
handing out
literally.
bulletins or programs or serving in the nursery. It is so important to thank people. But I can tell you this: when you are prideful and everything is about you, you don't praise other people.
Right.
And so this point, take every opportunity to praise the success of your partner, your friends, people you don't even know. Praise them. It is powerful.
Right,
Anyway,
right.
I went on. Sorry about that. But number 3.
Yeah. Compare yourself to God and understand that you are loved, but deeply inferior to him. That's a great way to recognize what humility is. Like if you get a little bit in your pride zone, all you have to think about is yourself compared to God and where we are, in position to him, but how much he loves us, and you start to, gas yourself up and believe your own press, and then you're not able to like walk in humility to people because somehow you think you're a little bit better than the checker or the person that works, at the sound booth or whatever. Like that's just a joke. Think about who God is and who you are.
So I think about when we get into an argument, which we've done twice in our whole marriage.
Today.
Today, maybe. Anyway, actually did happen today. We got not an argument, but just a little conflict. And
we always do when we're setting up for podcasts.
And we start looking at each other's flaws. And we go, well, you did this, or, well, you did this. And we're really not combative like that, but there are times where there's tension.
That's real life.
And that tension is focused on the flaws of the person you love. And think the reason this works is when you compare yourself, like Kimberly was saying, when you compare yourself to God, you're dealing with a God who has no flaws.
Right.
And so you feel lesser, inferior, and it puts you in perspective. If you're feeling prideful and better than other people, all right, just take a look at God for a moment, and it'll have a humbling impact on you. And that's why that number 3 was so important. If you want to develop humility, number 4, I ran out of air there. Run out of humility, run out of air in the podcast. Number 4, acknowledge your weaknesses. Just intentionally acknowledge your weakness. Be transparent about your shortcomings.
Yes.
You can do that at work.
Yeah.
You can do that if you're a leader, if you're a lead pastor, if you're a pastor at any level, if you're a CEO, if you're wherever your relationship is, acknowledge your weaknesses. If you're not safe to acknowledge your weaknesses, you've got a problem in your relationships.
And I think so many people are afraid of that because they think they're going to lose people's respect, their children, their spouse, their coworkers. Just the opposite happens. When you lead with authenticity about your struggles, you gain so much respect from the people around you, that you're willing to say, hey, this is not my sweet spot, or, I'm really working on this part of my life. Like it's just for a true leader, that's actually true leadership and people are drawn to that because they can't relate to perfection. It's not even plausible. Nobody's perfect.
So number 5, would you read number 5? How to develop humility. Here it is
to ask your partner what you can do to improve yourself. That's dangerous territory. Let's
No
move on to
thanks.
number
Move on
6.
I'm like, hey, tell me what are my weaknesses. Never mind.
I think a way to say that would be in a safe relationship and in a safe place with the right time, because that's really key. is to be able to say, and even to do it like this. If there are 3 things that I could do to improve our relationship, what would that look like for you?
And I would say, here's 10.
Instead of having them take a laundry list of the things they don't like. But yeah, just saying, hey, tonight, let's talk about 3 things, or even 2 or 1. What's something that I can work on this week that would, make our relationship better, and that I could consider as self-improvement.
You mentioned in a safe relationship, maybe if you're in a marriage, let's just relate this to marriage for a moment, because marriage is supposed to be intimate, safe relationship. And if you were to, even if you are married to somebody who's deeply flawed, maybe even toxic to a certain extent, maybe pre-abusive, not totally abusive, but pre-abusive. If you were to say to that person, that woman or that man, say, what can I do to improve in our relationship? It may be so disarming to that person. If they've got an inkling of goodness in them,
right.
it may move them.
Yeah.
I don't know. You have to evaluate whether you want to take that risk. Number 6, and finally this, don't seek to defend yourself when you are confronted. Listen and learn. And that is so important. I think I mentioned this before in this podcast, that I was interviewing a guy and that we ended up not hiring. There was 2 or 3 of us that are interviewing him. And I said, what do you think you could learn from me? And he said, I just don't know of anything. We didn't hire him, If he can't learn anything from me, it's not because it's about me, but I certainly can learn things about him. We have people that work for us that I learn from every day. And I'm becoming a better leader the more I get exposed to that. So humility doesn't just come naturally.
Right.
You have to work at it.
Right. Now, this is one of your quotes. I'm going to read it, and I want you to break it down, what you mean, as we come to a close here. Humility is an accurate view of yourself in a world where God is worshipped and others are heard and loved. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I think that some people think they live in a vacuum, or they live in a bubble, and God's not involved. Humility is in the context that I live in a world where God is really put in his rightful place. That's what worship is. So in our relationship, if I put God in his rightful place and I'm worshiping God, and then I'm listening to you, and love is the central theme, it's because God is in his place, you're in your place, I'm in my place, we are interacting. Humility is an accurate view of yourself in a world where God is worshiped and others are heard and loved. So you see yourself accurately. I do have talents that I bring to our relationship.
Yes.
You have talents that bring to relationship. But God is ultimately the perfect person in our marriage. And so I need to see who I am in my relationship as I worship God. So that's humility. Every one of us should pursue humility. And that's number 7. So next week, we're going to go to number 8, respect. Incredibly important in our relationships to have respect. So thanks for listening to Hope Rescue Podcast. We are Tim and Kimberly, and we're so glad and honored that you've listened to us. Come and join us again next week here at Hope Rescue.
Bye, guys.